The air was still, almost unnaturally calm. Aang sat cross-legged upon a high ridge overlooking the sea, the horizon a line of fire where the sun dipped into endless waters. He closed his eyes and let the breath move through him, steady and slow, the way his teachers had once taught him. In that silence, the whispers of the world came alive, the rhythmic crash of waves against stone, the faint hum of distant gulls, the eternal pulse of the wind. Balance. It was always balance he sought. Balance between the nations, balance between the elements, balance within himself. He had saved his world with that balance. He had brought fire and air, water and earth into harmony, bending them to peace instead of ruin. For a moment, that peace seemed unshakable, and then the sky tore. A sound like the cracking of glass split the heavens above him. His eyes snapped open, and he saw it, a wound spreading through the firmament, jagged and violet, glowing with an unearthly light. Stars warped, stretched, and bled away into the rift. From its depths came a low, resonant hum that sank into his bones like the tolling of a funeral bell. The Avatar stood. Wind rushed instinctively to his side, tugging at his robes, pulling him toward the breach. He bent the air against him, yet the pull was immense, more force than nature had ever wielded. The ground shook beneath his feet, dust lifting into spirals as though the world itself were being unmade. He tried to center himself. "I am the Avatar. I bring balance." The words felt hollow against the rift's roar. Shadows coiled along the edges of the wound, shapes that shifted and writhed without form. They whispered with voices layered atop each other, as if countless throats spoke the same words in endless delay. "Child of balance, you do not belong here." Aang bent his knees, hands raised, summoning the Avatar state. Power coursed through him, eyes and tattoos igniting with searing light. The air thundered, water lifted from the sea in vast torrents, fire sparked from nothing, and the earth beneath him rose like a shield. But even that torrent of elemental might felt frail against the cosmic fracture yawning wider in the sky. He leapt upward, carried by a column of wind and light. His heart thundered as he surged toward the wound, determined to bend it closed, to restore harmony as he always had. But as he drew near, the whispers grew clearer, voices dividing into 4 distinct currents, each heavier and more terrible than the last. One was rage, blood thick and iron-scented, promising endless victory through slaughter. Another was deceit, layered in promises of destiny, its tone shifting like sand. A third was silken, cloying, dripping with pleasures unnamed. The last was decay, warm and suffocating, offering rest in a father's embrace. Aang's breath faltered. He tried to hold fast, tried to bend the elements against the storm, but the voices clawed at his spirit. He saw visions, worlds aflame, skies filled with endless war, colossi clad in armor of iron and gold striding through rivers of corpses. He saw temples filled with chanting masses, their prayers not to the cycle of life but to a throne of bone and a god of silence. "No," his voice trembled even as the Avatar state blazed brighter. "This is not balance, this is not the way." The rift convulsed, lashing tendrils of violet lightning across the sky. One struck him full in the chest. For an instant all sensation vanished. No breath, no heartbeat, no sound. Then came the void, and with it the crushing weight of eternity. He fell, or rather, he was pulled. The wound in the heavens expanded like a maw, swallowing him whole. The light of his tattoos flickered as the world he knew, his world of rivers and forests, of laughter and grief, collapsed behind him. All that remained was the endless dark. He drifted through it, weightless, spinning among shards of broken constellations. Colors bled together in impossible hues. He tried to summon air, to summon fire, water, earth, anything, but the elements did not answer. They recoiled, as if fearful of this place. The voices returned, stronger now, echoing without end. "Balance has no meaning here, only war eternal, only the great game of gods and mortals." Aang clutched his chest, struggling for breath that did not come. He felt the presence of countless eyes watching him from the dark, their gaze pressing into his spirit, searching for weakness. He thought of his friends, Katara, Sokka, Toph, Zuko. He thought of the world he had sworn to protect. Was this to be the price of peace? To be cast adrift into an alien hell beyond comprehension? Ahead, a shape emerged in the void. At first he thought it a mountain, jagged and vast. Then he realized it was a city, towers rising like broken teeth, bridges collapsed into chasms, cathedrals twisted into silhouettes of despair. Fires burned among the ruins, their smoke lost in the abyss above. The pull dragged him closer, his limbs thrashed, his voice broke into a desperate cry, but the city swallowed him whole. All fell through shattered spires and broken arches, his body striking stone with a crack that shook dust into the air. Pain lanced through him, but it was fleeting compared to the weight of the silence that followed. He staggered to his feet, vision blurred, breath ragged. The city was empty. Statues of armored giants loomed from alcoves, their faces cracked, their weapons rusted. Banners of black and crimson hung in tatters, their symbols unrecognizable yet heavy with menace. The stench of burned incense clung to the air, mingled with something fouler, rot, oil and blood. All fell and blood. All fell. Aang's knees buckled. He pressed his palm to the cold stone floor, whispering to himself as much as to the world around him, "Where am I?" From the shadows of the broken cathedral, something moved. A slow tread, iron against stone, echoing in the cavernous dark. The Avatar lifted his head, and his heart froze. The first figures he saw in this new world were not friends, not monks, not spirits, but soldiers clad in steel and faith, their eyes like fire beneath their helms, and behind them the chant began, low, fervent, unrelenting, heretic. The soldiers came in ranks of steel and discipline, lasguns cradled in their arms, boots hammering the cracked stone of the ruined square. Their armor was battered but marked with symbols Undex could not understand, skulls, eagles with double heads, and parchment seals fluttering like dead leaves. Their voices rose in a chant that shook the very stones beneath his feet. Heretic. Witch. Heretic. Undex raised his hands slowly, palms open, his voice quiet yet steady. "I am not your enemy. I don't want to hurt anyone." The nearest soldier lifted his weapon. A line of crimson light lanced the ground at Undex's feet, scorching stone, and filling the air with the stink of burned dust. The threat was unmistakable. Instinct moved him before thought could form. Air surged upward, forming a shield that scattered the next volley of las fire into harmless sparks. The soldiers staggered, their ranks breaking as the wind howled around him, lifting cloaks, tearing banners from ruined arches. But Undex's heart clenched. He had defended himself, yes, but their fear was immediate, visceral. They saw not a boy but a weapon. Their commander stepped forward, a towering figure in a coat of black leather, her eyes like shards of obsidian. An iron symbol of a skull hung from her neck, and the parchment seals on her breastplate bore ink-dark blessings. She spoke in a voice stripped of warmth. "Psyker," she declared, "chain him." Before Aang could speak, nets weighted with iron slammed down upon him. He bent flame to cut them, but the fire sputtered, resisting him, as though the very air of this place recoiled from balance. He fought earth and wind into his limbs, but the weight of the chains was immense, etched with symbols that pressed into his skin like brands. They drained something deeper than strength. They pressed against his very soul. He was dragged through the ruined city, stumbling as soldiers forced him forward. His eyes searched the hollow streets. Corpses lay stacked like firewood in alleys, their eyes glazed, their bodies marked with strange runes. Ash drifted like snow through the air, settling on his hair, his robes, his skin. The silence of the dead pressed down heavier than the chains. They came to a towering cathedral, its gates of bronze dented and blackened by fire. Inside, light bled through colored glass, fractured and warped. The air reeked of incense, chokingly sweet, mixed with the acrid stench of blood long spilled. Statues of a man in golden armor lined the nave, his face stern, crowned by a halo of flame. Worshippers knelt on the cracked floor, their whispers rising like a tide. The commander strode ahead, dragging Aang by the chain. At the altar a figure awaited, a man cloaked in crimson, his skull bare, his eyes dark hollows rimmed with ritual scars. His staff ended in an iron aquila, and parchment prayers dangled from his belt. The commander bowed. "Inquisitor, we found this Psyker near the ruins. He resists, but he is strong." The Inquisitor's gaze swept over Aang like a blade. His voice was low, rasping, the sound of stone ground beneath iron. "Name." Aang lifted his chin. "I am Aang. I am the Avatar. I came here by accident." The Inquisitor's lips curled in something between disdain and curiosity. "Avatar, a false title, a demonic mask. The warp breeds countless pretenders. You will answer truthfully. Whom do you serve?" "I serve no one," Aang said, his voice firm. "I serve balance, life, peace." The words seemed to sting the chamber. Worshippers shifted, their eyes wide. Peace, an idea as alien to them as his bending. The Inquisitor leaned closer, his scarred face inches from Aang's. "You wield power, power without sanction. That makes you a threat to the Imperium of Man. You will be tested. If the Emperor finds you worthy, you may yet serve. If not," his hand gestured lazily toward the worshippers, "you will burn."
as all witches burn. Aang's breath trembled, but he straightened his shoulders. He thought of his friends, of the world he had left behind. He thought of promises made, to protect, to heal, to restore. "I will not be your weapon," he whispered. The Inquisitor's eyes narrowed, but before he could reply, a tremor shook the cathedral. Dust rained from the vaulted ceiling. The worshippers gasped and fell prostrate, whispering frantic prayers. Outside, a horn sounded, a long mournful note that vibrated in Aang's bones. The soldiers tensed, forming ranks. The commander spat a curse. "Cultists." The Inquisitor turned, voice sharp. "Guard the relics. Ready the flamers." He cast one last glance at Aang, and in his eyes burned both suspicion and something more, a flicker of calculation. "Perhaps the Emperor will test you sooner than I planned." The doors shuddered under impact. From beyond came screams and the crash of gunfire, the air already tainted by the stink of burning flesh. Aang felt the chains tighten, the wards biting deeper into his skin, as though they hungered for his weakness. He closed his eyes, centering his breath. The world around him was alien, cruel, but the storm was the same. He could hear it, the sound of rage, of fear, of despair. And once again, he was caught between forces older and darker than himself. The doors cracked. A hand forced through, a human hand, but twisted, fingers elongated into claws, flesh etched with runes that pulsed like living wounds. The soldiers raised their weapons, lasguns glowing red in the stained glass light. The Inquisitor turned to Aang, his voice a whisper edged with command. "Show me your worth, Psyker. Show me whether you are heretic or savior." The doors burst open, and the cathedral drowned in screams. The cathedral was fire and ruin. Bolter shells thundered, shattering columns into dust. The shriek of lost fire split the air, mingling with the howls of warped men whose flesh crawled with brands of chaos. The faithful screamed prayers to the Emperor, their voices breaking into sobs as cultists surged through the shattered doors. Aang staggered backward as chains bound to him pulled taut. The wards etched into the iron links burned, weighing him down like anchors. He could hear the clash of steel, the cries of the dying. His instinct screamed to act, to defend the helpless, yet the chains bit into his spirit with every attempt to summon bending. A soldier fell before him, throat torn by a clawed hand. Blood steamed across the stones, staining the cracked sigils carved into the floor. Aang's breath faltered, but resolve ignited in his chest. He slammed one foot down. Earth answered, slow and heavy, as though struggling through mud. But it answered. A surge cracked the stone beneath him, shattering the binding chains in a spray of sparks. Pain tore through him, but freedom came with it. The cultists turned toward him, their eyes black pools reflecting warp light. One raised a jagged blade, etched with runes that pulsed like open wounds. Aang swept his arm, and air rushed forth like a storm breaking through a canyon. The cultists staggered, their weapons torn from their hands, bodies hurled against the far wall. For a heartbeat, silence fell. The faithful stared at him. Soldiers lowered their weapons, eyes wide behind cracked visors. Whispers rippled among the kneeling worshippers. "Psyker," one breathed. "No, not Psyker, something else." The Inquisitor's gaze burned into him, unreadable. "You fight with the warp, yet not of the warp. What are you, child?" Aang's chest heaved with breath. "I am the Avatar. I am sworn to protect life, to bring balance." The words landed like a heresy in the chamber. The ecclesiarchs and priests clutched their rosaries, whispering prayers through gritted teeth. Yet others, common soldiers, bloodied and weary, stared at him with something like hope. Before the Inquisitor could reply, the cultists surged again. From their ranks rose a leader clad in baroque armor of rust and bone, his flesh fused with metal. Horns jutted from his skull, and in his hands he bore a blade of fire that licked the air with screams. "By the blood god," the champion bellowed, charging through broken pews. Soldiers fired, but rounds sparked harmlessly against the demon-forged armor. The champion swung his blade, cleaving a guardsman in two, the corpse collapsing in a shower of burning gore. Aang stepped forward, the elements answering his call. Water leapt from shattered urns, fire from spilled braziers, air howling like a storm, earth groaning from the bones of the cathedral itself. All four spiraled around him, weaving into a shield of light and fury. The champion roared and brought his blade down. Aang caught it in a wall of stone, sparks screaming as steel bit into earth. He thrust upward with air, sending the warrior staggering. Flames leapt from his palm, searing across the armor, and water surged like a serpent, extinguishing the unholy fire of the daemon blade. For an instant, Aang saw the man beneath the corruption, a face scarred, eyes wide with pain, lips moving in a prayer drowned by chaos. He hesitated. To kill was to break everything he believed. That heartbeat of mercy cost him. The champion's fist smashed into his chest, hurling him across the nave. He crashed against the base of a statue, vision swimming with stars. The Inquisitor's voice cut through the haze, sharp as iron. "Kill him, boy, or he will kill you and all these souls with you." Aang's hands trembled. Kill. That was not his way. That was not balance. Yet around him, the faithful screamed as more cultists pressed inward. The champion advanced, fire dripping from his blade, his shadow vast against the burning glass. Aang's voice broke as he cried out, "I will not kill." Instead, he summoned the Avatar state. His tattoos ignited, his eyes shone like suns, and the four elements answered not in fragments, but as one. Air, water, earth, and fire wove into a storm of blinding force. The cathedral groaned under the weight of it, windows shattering, pillars crumbling. The champion struck, but his blade shattered against the cyclone of power. Aang lifted his hand, and the ground itself rose to swallow the warrior. Stone erupted, binding him in chains of earth, water freezing across his limbs, fire searing his weapon to slag. The man screamed, half in rage, half in release, as the corruption of chaos writhed and burned away under the Avatar's fury. When the light faded, nothing remained but ash scattered across the altar steps. The cultists broke, their courage unraveling. Some fled into the ruins, others fell to their knees, their bodies twisting as warp energies recoiled upon them. The guardsmen advanced, bolters roaring, cutting down the remnants in disciplined fire. Silence followed. Smoke rose from broken pews. Ash drifted like snow through the fractured roof. Aang stood trembling, the glow of the Avatar state fading, his body aching with the weight of power spent. The faithful stared. Soldiers crossed themselves, murmuring prayers. A few dared whisper words forbidden in their creed. Miracle, saint. The Inquisitor descended the altar steps, his staff striking the stone with each step. His gaze was cold, but beneath it burned something dangerous. Interest. You wield great power, he said slowly. Not of the Emperor, yet not wholly of the warp. The common men see a saint, the priests see a heretic, and I. He paused, eyes narrowing. I see a weapon. Aang's jaw tightened. He met the Inquisitor's gaze, his voice low. I am not your weapon. I will never be.
The Inquisitor's lips curled into a faint, joyless smile. You will learn, child. All who live in the Imperium serve, whether they will it or not. The only question is to whom. Behind him the chants of the faithful rose, not in unison but in confusion. Some praised the Emperor for deliverance, others whispered of a new power, a new savior. The word Avatar passed through the cathedral like forbidden fire. Aang closed his eyes, feeling the weight of countless gazes upon him. In their eyes he saw hope, fear, suspicion, and fanaticism. None of it was balance, none of it was peace, and yet he knew he could not turn away. Sleep came to Aang not as rest, but as surrender. They had bound him again after the battle, though not with iron chains this time. Ropes etched with sigils of warding, prayers inked in a language he could not read, circled his wrists and ankles. Guards stood at the edges of the chamber, lasguns in hand, their eyes fixed on him as though a single blink would see him dissolve into smoke. The Inquisitor had ordered him confined in the crypt beneath the cathedral, where dust lay thick upon cracked sarcophagi, and the scent of rot clung like a second skin. There, in the darkness, his body finally gave way, but sleep was no refuge. He stood in a place without horizon, without ground, without sky. A sea of colors raged around him, twisting into shapes only to collapse into new horrors. Flames burned cold, rivers flowed upward, and the air itself seemed to bleed. He clutched his chest, gasping for breath, but the world had no air to offer, and then the voices came. Child of balance, they whispered, 1,000 tones braided into one. You do not belong to this galaxy, yet your soul shines here brighter than suns. We see you, we hunger for you. Aang turned, searching the chaos around him, and the sea of colors parted. From it stepped a figure tall as a mountain, armored in brass and scarred by endless battle. His helm was a snarling beast, and from his gauntlets dripped blood that never ceased to flow. His voice cracked the groundless void. I am Khorne, the Lord of Battle. You are fire and fury, Avatar. Abandon your chains of mercy, and I will grant you strength enough to break all who stand before you. Kill, and your power will rival the gods. The vision shook with his roar, and Aang stumbled backward, but before he could answer, the void twisted again. A new form emerged, a figure cloaked in shimmering feathers, a face masked and shifting, eyes burning with knowledge beyond comprehension. Its words slithered into his mind, layered and countless. I am Tizonch, the changer of ways. Your destiny is not yet written, child. You seek balance, yet balance is nothing but stagnation. With me you can weave a new fate. Imagine worlds where no war scars the skies, where peace reigns eternal. All this I can grant, if you but step into the weave of my design. Aang clutched his head. The voices pulled at him, promising what his heart longed for, strength to protect, wisdom to restore, but the void did not relent. From the swirling abyss rose a figure of perfect beauty, neither man nor woman, cloaked in silks that shifted like water. Their voice was honey, warm and soothing, brushing against the deepest hungers of the soul. I am Slaanesh. You carry the weight of duty like a chain. Lay it down. Embrace freedom, sensation, joy. I will unburden you. I will make every breath ecstasy. You need not suffer for others. Aang, You can be more than savior. You can be whole. His breath trembled, but he forced the words out. No, that isn't who I am. And yet the vision did not end. The air grew heavy, sweet with rot, warm as a fever. A vast figure emerged, swollen with decay, flies buzzing in clouds about his bulk. His belly split with a grin of teeth, and his voice rolled like thunder softened by sorrow. I am Nurgle, grandfather of plagues. Poor child, you carry fear and grief like wounds. Lay them down in my embrace. I will grant you peace. No war, no struggle, only the eternal garden, where all are welcome. Do not fight, rest. The weight of it pressed against his spirit. His knees bent. His heart screamed for his world, for Katara, for the laughter of friends now forever out of reach. Couldn't there be peace? Couldn't there be rest? He clenched his fists. No. His voice cracked but did not falter. I will not bow to you, any of you. The sea of colors convulsed, the four gods roaring in fury. Their voices overlapped, drowning the void. You will serve. One way or another, you will serve. And through the cacophony, another voice came. It was faint, like an ember almost smothered by ash. A single word carried upon the breath of eternity. Unerring. He froze. That voice was not cruel, not mocking. It was weary, burdened, yet filled with authority that bent the warp itself. He turned, searching, and for an instant he glimpsed a figure of gold, seated upon a throne of bone and iron. Light streamed from its broken form, brighter than stars, and a million voices prayed in its silence. Then it was gone. The void closed around him, darkness rushing in like water into a drowning man's lungs. The whispers of chaos receded, though their laughter lingered, echoing in his bones. Unerring fell through the sea of colors, screaming, until stones struck his back and he awoke in the crypt. Sweat drenched him. His breath came ragged, his hands shaking as though the gods still clawed at his soul. Around him, the guards shifted uneasily, whispering prayers beneath their breath. They had not seen what he had seen, yet they felt it. The warp pressed thin against the walls, leaking its madness into every corner. Unerring closed his eyes, heart hammering. He had faced fire lords, armies and spirits beyond mortal reckoning. But never this. Never voices that promised the deepest truths of his own heart, twisting them into chains. Balance had always been his path. But here, in this galaxy drowned in endless war, balance seemed a lie. And the most terrible thought struck him, heavier than any chain. What if the Chaos Gods were right? The cathedral's crypt opened its jaws at dawn. Soldiers marched Aang upward from the shadows, their boots echoing against the stairwell stone. The incense was thicker here, hanging in the air like a fog, its cloying sweetness designed to mask the stench of blood that seeped from cracked flagstones. Above, the nave had been cleared of corpses, though the scorch marks of battle remained etched into walls and floor. At the far end, before the shattered altar, a man awaited. Robed in white and gold, jeweled crozier in his hand, his presence radiated a sanctity Aang had never encountered. His eyes burned with the certainty of faith, his voice deep as liturgy when he spoke. Bring forth the witch. They dragged Aang before the ecclesiarch. The congregation knelt in ragged rows, their lips moving in endless prayers to the emperor, their eyes flickering toward him with both fear and fascination. Candles flickered in their thousands, their smoke curling upward in streams that joined into black clouds beneath the fractured dome. The inquisitor stood to one side, his expression carved from stone. He did not speak. The trial belonged to the ecclesiarchy. The priest's crozier tapped the stone once, the sound echoing like a judge's hammer. You are accused of witchcraft, he intoned, of wielding powers without the emperor's blessing, of consorting with the warp. In this holy place you will be tested. If your power is his gift, you will be spared. If it is the work of daemons, he gestured toward a brazier filled with burning oil, you will be cleansed. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some eyes shone with hope, others with hunger for blood. Aang's breath caught in his chest. He had faced tribunals before, chieftains, elders, fire lords, but never one where a single word might condemn him to fire. The priest raised his hand. Demonstrate. Aang's heart thundered. He closed his eyes, pulling breath deep into his lungs. The air responded first, swirling in faint eddies about his feet. Then water rose from bowls at the altar, circling him like serpents of light. Fire sparked from the braziers, leaping without consuming, dancing in arcs about his shoulders. Earth trembled beneath his soles, cracked lines spreading outward. Gasps filled the nave. Some fell to their knees, hands clasped in prayer. Others recoiled, making the sign of the Aquila upon their chests. The ecclesiarch's eyes narrowed. Not warp-born, he murmured, and yet not sanctified. He gestured, and a boy was brought forth, a child no more than 10, pale with hunger, his eyes sunken with fear. Heal him, the priest commanded. Show us if your gift serves the emperor's mercy.
Aang's chest tightened. The boy's arm was withered, black veins twisting across his flesh like roots of corruption. Warp taint, subtle and deadly. The crowd murmured. The child was marked for the pyres. Aang knelt, placing his hand gently upon the boy's shoulder. He called water to his fingertips, not as weapon but as conduit. His breath flowed steady, calm, guiding the element's cool strength into the boy's flesh. Slowly, the blackness receded, the veins shrinking, color returning to pallid skin. The boy gasped. He lifted his healed arm, eyes wide with wonder, and the crowd erupted, half in awe, half in terror. Miracle, someone shouted. Witchery, cried another. The ecclesiarch's crozier slammed against stone, silencing the tumult. His gaze was hard, unreadable. The Emperor may have used you as his tool, or the ruinous powers seek to deceive us. This cannot yet be judged. Aang rose, his voice trembling but resolute. I do not serve your Emperor. I do not serve your gods of war and decay. I serve balance, peace. The words struck the chamber like a hammer blow. Priests recoiled, faces pale with fury. The faithful murmured in shock, torn between awe and outrage. Only the Inquisitor did not flinch. His eyes burned as though Aang had confirmed what he already suspected. The ecclesiarch's voice was thunder. Peace. There is no peace in this galaxy. There is only war. The Emperor teaches endurance, not mercy. Strength, not compromise. Your creed is heresy. Aang shook his head. Then your galaxy is broken. Without balance, without compassion, it will devour itself. The words drew gasps and curses. Guards leveled their weapons, fingers tight on triggers. But before order could collapse into slaughter, the great bells of the cathedral tolled. Deep, sonorous, shaking dust from the rafters. The ecclesiarch raised his crozier once more. His voice was sharp with finality. This one will not be burned yet. He will be taken into the custody of the Inquisition. There the Emperor's will shall be discerned. If he is tool, he will serve. If he is heretic, he will perish. Chains were brought again, cold against Aang's wrists. As they bound him, he heard the voices of the crowd. Some whispered his name with reverence, others with dread. Avatar, demon. The Inquisitor stepped close, speaking low enough for only Aang to hear. You saved the boy, you revealed yourself, but mercy is weakness here, and weakness in the Imperium is death. Remember that. Aang looked past him to the faithful still kneeling, their faces lit by candlelight, torn between hope and fear. His voice was quiet, but it carried to the chamber's edges. I will not stop trying to bring peace, even if it kills me. The Inquisitor's gaze lingered, cold and calculating. Then he turned to the guards. Take him, his trial has only begun.
And as they dragged Aang toward the cathedral gates, the bells continued to toll, heavy and unrelenting, like the heartbeat of a galaxy that knew nothing of peace. The city burned by nightfall. Smoke rolled through the shattered avenues like a tide, carrying with it the stink of charred flesh and gunpowder. From the high spires, flames licked the stars, their glow painting the ruins in red and gold. The shrill wail of sirens bled through the chaos, followed by the thunder of bolters and the metallic shriek of chainswords tearing flesh. The Inquisitor had taken Aang to the battlements of the outer wall, his wrists bound, guarded by soldiers whose faces were hidden behind visors of glass and steel. From this vantage, Aang saw the full horror of the enemy. The cultists came in droves, flooding the streets below, their banners stitched from flayed skin, their chants rising in ecstasy to the dark gods. Some were human in form, others twisted with horns, claws, and eyes that burned with warp fire. They surged against the city gates with reckless fervor, clawing and hacking even as lasgun fire tore them down in heaps. Do you see, Avatar? The Inquisitor's voice was iron and shadow beside him. This is the Imperium's truth. Every day we hold back this tide. Every day the weak pray for deliverance that never comes. And you speak of peace. Aang's gaze swept the battlefield. Explosions tore craters in the earth. Men screamed as they burned alive. A woman clutched a child, both cut down by a stray bolt shell. His heart clenched. Peace seemed like an impossible dream here, a whisper drowned in a storm of blood. Yet he could not look away. He could not turn from their suffering. The gates buckled under the enemy's assault. With a crack of steel they fell, and the tide poured inward. The Astra Militarum roared their defiance, bolters barking, bayonets fixed. The clash was thunderous, a storm of steel and flesh. A guardsman beside Aang fell screaming, his chest torn open by a jagged blade. Blood splashed across Aang's chains. His spirit broke. He turned to the Inquisitor. Release me. I can help. The man's gaze was cold, unblinking. Will you kill? Aang faltered. His voice was steady, but his chest ached with the weight of it. I will defend. I will protect. The Inquisitor studied him for a long breath. Then, with a motion sharp as a blade, he cut the chains. "Prove it." Aang leapt from the battlements into the chaos below. Air surged beneath him, slowing his descent, carrying him like a falling leaf. He landed amid the tide of cultists, their faces twisted in madness, their blades dripping with blood. They turned upon him, shrieking praises to their gods. Aang inhaled, and the world answered. Fire erupted from his palms, a sweeping wave that drove the front ranks back in terror. Water surged from broken cisterns, coiling around his arms, striking like serpents. Earth buckled and split, swallowing foes into its depths. Air howled in spirals, scattering bodies like chaff in the wind. For a heartbeat, the tide faltered. Soldiers stared wide-eyed, awe replacing despair. But Aang's heart was not in triumph. Each blow struck only to disarm, to disable. He sent fire to blind, not to kill. He bent earth to trap, not to crush. His hands trembled with every scream, every broken body. A cultist lunged, eyes black pits, blade raised high. Aang swept his arm, wind snapping bones, hurling the man aside. But before he could steady himself, another leapt forward. A guardsman moved to intercept, chainsword roaring, and in a spray of blood the cultist's body fell in two. Aang froze. The soldier's eyes met his, fierce and unflinching. Hesitation kills, the man spat, before charging back into the fray. The words cut deep. The battle pressed tighter. Daemons clawed their way into reality, forms half flesh, half nightmare, dripping with warp fire. One towered over the ranks, a beast of horns and muscle, its roar shaking the ground. Soldiers broke before it, stumbling back in terror. Aang's eyes narrowed. The avatar state surged, tattoos blazing, eyes igniting white. He bent the four elements as one, a storm of fire, water, earth and wind, tearing into the daemon. Its claws raked against shields of stone and ice. Its maw opened in a scream, but flame seared its throat. Air crushed its lungs. Earth swallowed its legs. With one final strike, the storm consumed it, and the daemon's body collapsed into ash and smoke. The field erupted in cries of astonishment. "Saint," someone shouted. "Deliverer." But Aang's chest heaved, sweat pouring from his brow. His spirit was heavy with doubt. Each strike he had made had defended lives, yet around him the dead lay piled high, their eyes glassy, their blood soaking the stones. Above the din, the Inquisitor's voice rang out from the battlements. "Behold the Emperor's hand. He has sent us a weapon of flame and storm." The crowd of soldiers roared, their morale ignited. They pressed forward, bayonets gleaming, bolters spitting death. But Aang's voice broke against the storm. "No, I am not your weapon." None heard him, or if they did not care. To them he was miracle, myth, tool. His plea was drowned in the thunder of war. As the night deepened, the tide of cultists broke, retreating into the ruins. Fires burned where they had stood, ash drifting on the wind. Soldiers cheered, lifting their weapons in triumph. But Aang stood amid the bodies, his hands trembling, his heart sinking. He knelt beside a fallen guardsman, closing the man's eyes with gentle fingers. The soldier's lips still whispered prayers to the Emperor, even in death. Aang's gaze lifted to the burning sky. He had saved lives, but not all, never all. And for the first time, he felt the crushing truth of this galaxy. Here, no one could save everyone. The Inquisitor descended from the battlements, his boots crunching over the dead. His gaze was sharp, his voice edged with certainty. "You see now, mercy is weakness, and weakness feeds the enemy. You will learn, Avatar. You will learn, or you will die." Aang said nothing, his eyes fixed upon the fires consuming the horizon. His heart was heavy, his spirit trembling. For the first time since entering this world, he wondered if balance was even possible here. The battle had ended, but victory tasted of ash. Smoke clung to the ruined city, turning the air into a choking veil. Corpses lay in heaps, cultists and soldiers alike, their blood mingling on the stone streets. The cathedral's bells tolled still, though faintly now, cracked by fire and shrapnel. Aang walked among the dead, his steps slow, his heart heavy. He bent no flame, no wind, no earth. He only walked, his eyes tracing faces that would never breathe again. The soldiers did not share his grief. They marched among the bodies, pulling their dead into rows, looting the fallen cultists, reloading their weapons with mechanical precision. Some knelt and prayed to the Emperor, their voices hoarse but unwavering. To them the slaughter was not tragedy but duty fulfilled. The Inquisitor watched Aang closely. "You saved many lives. The men believe you a sign, but you refuse the truth of war." Aang looked up, eyes tired but fierce. "I did what I could, but killing them." His voice faltered as he glanced at the mountains of corpses. "This isn't peace. This isn't balance. It's endless death." The Inquisitor's lips curved in a humorless smile.
Now you begin to see. That is the Imperium. That is the galaxy. There is no peace, only war. You speak of balance, but in war balance is weakness, and weakness feeds the enemy. Aang clenched his fists, shaking his head. Where I come from, I fought for peace. I stopped wars without killing. I ended a tyrant's reign without shedding blood. There has to be another way. The man's eyes narrowed. Then you are a child lost in a dream. Here mercy damns more souls than cruelty. You are dangerous because you believe otherwise. He gestured, and soldiers stepped forward, their boots striking stone like hammers. Chains once more bound Aang's wrists, heavy and inscribed with wards. This time, he did not resist. His strength was not in question. It was his will that trembled. They dragged him back into the crypts beneath the cathedral, where candles burned low and shadows stretched like claws across the walls. They locked him within a narrow cell, the iron door slamming shut with a finality that echoed in his bones. Hours passed, perhaps days. Time blurred in the dark. Only the drip of water and the muffled prayers above marked the silence. Aang sat with knees pulled to his chest, the chains heavy upon his arms. His thoughts circled endlessly, dragging him down. He saw again the cultist's face, warped by chaos, his eyes once human before madness consumed him. He saw the guardsman who had cut the man down without hesitation, his words sharp, hesitation kills. He heard the whispers of the warp still, faint but lingering, promising strength, promising freedom, promising peace if he would only surrender. He pressed his palms against his temples. No, he whispered, that's not me. But doubt festered. What if they were right? What if mercy truly was weakness here? He had seen men and women pray with tears on their faces, only to die screaming seconds later. He had seen children trampled beneath chaos's tide. His ideals had not saved them. His refusal to kill had left others to do the killing in his place. Was his balance truly justice or cowardice? The cell door creaked. The Inquisitor entered, flanked by 2 soldiers. His eyes gleamed in the candlelight. You are conflicted, he said. Good. Doubt is the crucible in which truth is forged. Aang lifted his head. You don't understand. Where I come from, life mattered. All life. I can't abandon that. The Inquisitor leaned close, his voice a whisper. And yet you already have. Every time you refused to strike, another soldier bled in your place. Their deaths are on your hands. That is the truth you fear. Aang's breath caught, the words cut like knives. His heart raced, but he could not deny the image that rose before him. The guardsman cut down, the child nearly lost, the screams of those he had failed to reach. I didn't ask to be here, Aang said, his voice cracking. I didn't ask for this war. No one asks, the Inquisitor replied, but all must serve. You speak of balance, but the galaxy demands sacrifice. You must choose. Will you serve the Emperor and stand against the dark, or will you let your mercy damn billions? The silence after his words pressed like a weight. Aang bowed his head, trembling. His spirit cried out for guidance, for the voices of his past lives, but here they were silent, drowned beneath the roar of the warp. The Inquisitor stood straight. I will not decide for you. The Emperor will test you soon enough. Pray that you survive his judgment. He turned and left, the door slamming shut, leaving Aang once more in shadow. The boy pressed his forehead to his knees, his breath ragged. Doubt gnawed at him, sharper than any chain. Balance had always been his truth. But here, in this galaxy of madness, mercy might mean destruction. Peace might be a lie. And as sleep finally dragged him down, he wondered with dread, if the cost of saving lives was killing, would he be strong enough to pay it? Darkness pressed close, a weight thicker than chains. Aang lay upon the cold stone floor of his cell, staring upward at the dripping ceiling. The iron wards etched into his bindings glowed faintly, their light dimming and flaring as though in rhythm with a distant heartbeat. He had tried to meditate, to call upon the stillness that once bridged him to his past lives, but the silence here was unnatural. His connection was severed. The voices of Roku, Kyoshi, and the countless avatars before him were gone, smothered beneath the roar of this galaxy's chaos. And into that silence other voices crept. At first it was a whisper, faint and indistinct, like the hiss of wind across shattered glass. Then it grew clearer, layered, seductive. Child of balance, lost one, broken one, you do not belong, yet you shine. Aang shut his eyes, pressing his palms to his ears, but the voices lived within his thoughts. Shadows pooled in the corners of the cell, thickening into forms both real and impossible. The first was rage given shape, a towering figure clad in brass and blood, a helm shaped like a snarling beast. The heat of his presence scorched the air, and the smell of iron filled Aang's nostrils. I am Khorne, Lord of War, the figure bellowed. You weep for the fallen, yet their deaths are nothing without vengeance. Strike without mercy, kill without hesitation. Then you will know true strength. Serve me, Avatar, and you will never again be weak. The cell trembled with his fury. Aang's fists clenched, but his voice was steady. Strength without mercy is nothing. It is destruction. I will not kill for you. Korn laughed, a sound like thunder tearing mountains apart. You already kill, boy. Every soul slain because you hesitated belongs to me. The shadow dissolved, and another form emerged, cloaked in feathers, its face a mask of shifting symbols, eyes burning like twin suns. Its voice was a chorus, smooth and serpentine. I am T-Cinch, the changer of ways. You seek balance, yet balance is illusion. The galaxy is change, constant and eternal. You fear killing, but what if you could weave a destiny where you never must? I can show you futures where war ends, where peace endures forever. Walk with me, and the strands of fate will bend to your will. The words sank into Aang's heart like roots, a world without war, a world of peace everlasting. His breath trembled. Was it possible? Could destiny itself be bent? But he shook his head. Peace built on lies is no peace at all. I won't be your pawn. T-Cinch's masked face tilted, a smile hidden behind shifting glyphs. All who claim to serve balance are pawns. Little avatar, the only choice is whose game you play. The feathers melted into silk. From the darkness stepped a figure neither male nor female, their beauty radiant, their voice honey poured into his ears. Every movement was grace, every breath a temptation. I am Slanesh. You are weary, child. So weary. You carry burdens too heavy. Deny yourself joy. Deny yourself release. Why? For a world already ash. Let go. Indulge in what your heart craves. Freedom. Sensation. Love. I can give you bliss beyond imagining. You will never suffer again. Warmth wrapped around him, gentle as a lover's embrace. His chest ached with longing for Katara's touch, for laughter, for the simple joy of home. For one breath he wanted to surrender, to close his eyes and forget, but he forced himself back. Happiness that costs the world its soul is not happiness, it is corruption. The figure pouted, lips curving with mock sadness, so noble, so very lonely. The warmth rotted away into stench. A vast bulk filled the cell, blotting out light. Its flesh was split with sores, flies buzzing in swarms around it, and yet its smile was tender, almost fatherly. Its voice rolled like thunder softened by sorrow. I am Nurgle, grandfather of plagues. Poor child, you are tired, afraid, broken. Let me free you of fear. Let me wrap you in my garden, where there is no war, no doubt, no pain, only acceptance, only peace. All you must do is stop fighting. Rest, my little one. The cell reeked of decay, of rot, of earth after rain. The weight of despair pressed so heavy, Aang nearly collapsed. For a moment he longed for it, to rest, to lay down his burden, to stop fighting forever. No, he whispered, his voice shaking. I can't. I have to fight, even if it hurts. The figure's smile widened. Then you will suffer, and I will be waiting when you break. The shadows withdrew, the four presences retreating but never gone. Their laughter echoed long after they had vanished, their promises lingering like poison in his veins. Aang fell to his knees, breath ragged, chains rattling against stone. His spirit trembled. They had offered him everything he wanted, strength, destiny, love, peace, and yet he had refused. But doubt gnawed at him. Could he resist forever? Could balance endure against gods eternal? Above, faint and distant, he heard the cathedral bells toll once more. Their echoes reminded him of the monks of his youth, of the air temples, of peace once real. He clung to that memory like a lifeline in the storm. I will not be your slave, he whispered to the dark. I am the Avatar. I am balance. But even as he spoke, the laughter of chaos lingered, patient and hungry, and in the silence that followed, one thought haunted him more than all the gods' whispers combined. What if balance was not enough? The night split with screams. Ashring's cell trembled, as stone above shook beneath unseen impacts. Dust rained from the ceiling, the wards on his chains flaring as though in protest. He staggered to his feet, heart pounding. Through the barred window of the crypt door, he saw guards running, their voices frantic. The veil is breaking, one shouted. The warp bleeds into the city, cried another. A low resonant roar followed, a sound not born of lungs, but of something deeper, something ancient and monstrous clawing its way into the mortal world. The Inquisitor himself descended into the crypt, his cloak torn, his face pale with fury. The daemons breach reality. We cannot hold the cathedral without aid. His eyes burned into Wang's. Now is the moment. Will you stand with us or let us burn? Before Aang could speak, the stone walls shuddered. A fissure split the floor of the crypt, green fire seeping from the wound, filling the chamber with the stench of brimstone and blood. From it rose shapes that defied reason, limbs too many, mouths without faces, eyes dripping black ichor. The guards screamed, their lasguns chattering uselessly against the horrors. The Inquisitor drew his pistol, firing bolt rounds that tore daemons apart in bursts of ichor and flame. Yet more came, their claws tearing through armor, their shrieks echoing like tortured souls. The Inquisitor turned on Aang, his voice a blade. Choose Avatar. Prove yourself or perish here as a coward. Aang's hands trembled against the chains. The voices of the Chaos Gods still haunted his mind, whispering, mocking. His breath faltered. Could he fight them without becoming them? Another scream tore the air. A guardsman fell, his body ripped open, entrails steaming on the stones. Blood pooled at Aang's feet. The daemon turned its eyeless face toward him, claws raised. Instinct surged. Aang's tattoos ignited. His eyes blazed white. The Avatar state erupted like a storm breaking its cage. Chains shattered, wards bursting in sparks, as the four elements roared into the crypt in a cataclysm of fury. Air howled through the chamber, ripping daemons from their feet, hurling them into walls that cracked beneath the force. Earth surged upward, jagged spikes impaling warped flesh. Water burst from fissures, swirling into blades of ice that sliced through ichor and bone. Fire burned white-hot, cleansing shadows, filling the crypt with searing light. The daemons shrieked, their forms unraveling under the onslaught, their bodies dissolving into smoke and ash. The fissure sealed beneath a weight of stone, earth folding like a scar over the wound. The guards lay stunned, shielding their eyes from the radiance. The Inquisitor stood unmoving, his gaze locked on Aang, unreadable. But Aang was not done. The Avatar state dragged him upward, carrying him through the cathedral as though the world itself bent to his will. He burst into the nave, where battle raged in fire and shadow. Daemons clawed through shattered stained glass, wings dripping with warp light, jaws filled with screams of the damned. The faithful fled in terror, priests clutching relics, guardsmen firing until their barrels glowed red. The world was breaking. Aang raised his arms, and the storm answered. Columns of flame seared the invaders, casting their shadows long across the walls. Walls of stone rose, shielding the weak from claws. Air howled, scattering wings and breaking bones. Water surged, sweeping daemons into torrents that froze and shattered them like glass. He was fury. He was balance unchained. He was the Avatar state burning against the warp. But as he fought, he felt their fear. The faithful who moments ago begged for salvation now trembled beneath his light. Their chants broke into cries of dread. Too much power. No man should wield this. Not of the Emperor. Not of him. Aang's gaze swept across them. Their terror struck him harder than any daemon's claw. Was he savior, or was he becoming the monster they feared? The Inquisitor's voice cut through the storm, sharp as iron. Behold the Emperor's judgment. A weapon forged in fire and spirit. He is no heretic. He is deliverance. The soldiers roared, emboldened, and pressed the daemons back. The priests knelt, torn between prayer and terror. Yet Aang felt none of their triumph. His body burned with elemental fury, his mind consumed by the Avatar state's cold clarity. He had become a storm without mercy, and the faces of the terrified faithful burned in his sight. A daemon larger than the rest surged through the breach, its body a mass of eyes and mouths. Its scream shattered glass, its claws gouging stone. Aang met it head-on, his fury tearing it apart in a single strike of fire and earth, its body collapsing into smoke. Silence followed. The daemons were gone, banished, the breach sealed. The cathedral smoldered, its stained glass shattered, its walls cracked. The faithful stared at him in silence, some in awe, some in horror. The Avatar state's glow faded, leaving Aang trembling, sweat dripping from his brow, breath ragged. He fell to his knees amid the ruin, surrounded by whispers. Saint, daemon, heretic. The Inquisitor approached, his boots crunching on shattered stone. He knelt before Aang, his gaze fierce. You have shown your worth, but know this, the Emperor demands not balance, not mercy. Aang raised his head, eyes still glowing faintly, his voice quiet yet unyielding. I will serve no god of war, not yours, not theirs. The Inquisitor's expression did not change, but his eyes gleamed with cold satisfaction. Then your trial has only begun, and in the shadows of the ruined cathedral, the faithful whispered still, torn between worship and fear.
The cathedral lay in ruins. Smoke rose in thin streams from shattered pillars, and the lingering stench of demonic ichor clung to every stone. The faithful had been herded from the nave, their voices hushed, their chants uncertain. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, silence weighed heavier than prayer. Aang sat upon the cold floor, wrists once more bound in chains etched with sanctified seals, his chest heaved from exhaustion, his spirit aching from the storm of the Avatar state. The echoes of the battle still haunted him, flashes of light, the shrieks of daemons, and most of all the faces of mortals who had looked upon him with terror. He had saved them, yet they had stared as though he were the monster. The Inquisitor stood apart, speaking in low tones with two other figures who had arrived from the void. Their robes were black as the abyss, their faces gaunt, eyes sharp with suspicion. Rosettes of the Inquisition gleamed upon their chests, heavy with authority. Aang could not hear their words, but he felt their gazes pierce him like knives. Hours passed before judgment was spoken, They gathered within the shattered sanctuary, lit only by the flicker of braziers and the glow of candles that trembled in the stale air. The inquisitors formed a circle, their voices low, each word deliberate, sharp as blades. The warp itself stirs at his presence, one said, her voice cold as stone. He is a beacon to the enemy. Already a breach has formed where he walks. Another shook his head. And yet he banishes daemons with power untainted. Such a weapon could be turned to the Emperor's cause. The first snarled. Weapons are dangerous when they refuse to obey. He speaks not of the Emperor but of balance, a creed alien, heretical. He corrupts the faithful merely by existing. The third, silent until now, leaned forward. His eyes were hollow pits. We cannot risk contagion of spirit. If he is truly a psyker, unbound, uncontrolled, then the only course is exterminitus. Burn this world, and with it burn him. The words struck the chamber like thunder. Exterminitus, the utter destruction of the planet, its people, its history, reduced to ash for the sake of purity. Aang's breath caught. He stared at them, his voice breaking. You would kill them all. These people you claim to protect. Women, children, the innocent. None looked at him. None answered. Their debate continued, as though he were already ash. The Inquisitor who had brought him here finally spoke, his voice measured, sharp. Exterminitus is premature. His power is undeniable. He destroyed the demons where our weapons failed. If the Emperor sent him, then to kill him is to deny the Emperor's will. The first spat. And if the ruinous powers sent him, if he is bait for our pride, would you gamble a world for a child's soul? Their words cut into Aang deeper than blades. His body shook with fury. He rose to his knees, chains rattling. You talk of gods and will, but you ignore life. I saved your people. I fought to protect them, and you would kill them because you are afraid of me. The circle of inquisitors turned their gazes upon him, their eyes filled with contempt and suspicion. Fear keeps the Imperium alive, one said. Without it we are lost. The second whispered a prayer. The Emperor protects, but he demands obedience. You do not obey. The third's lips curved into a grim smile. Better a million dead innocents than one heretic allowed to live. Aang's heart pounded in his chest. Rage surged through him, but so too did despair. These men and women wielded the lives of billions as casually as a soldier wielded a blade. To them compassion was weakness. To them mercy was heresy. For a moment he considered unleashing the Avatar state again, tearing down the chamber, breaking free into the night. But then he looked at their faces, cold, fanatical, unyielding. If he struck now, he would confirm everything they already believed. The Inquisitors' debate dragged on, their words circling like vultures above a corpse. Finally, the one who had defended him raised a hand. Enough, he will not be destroyed here. I will take him into custody. I will bring him before the conclave. Let them judge whether he is saint or heretic. The others glared but did not challenge. With slow nods they turned and left, their cloaks trailing like shadows. The silence that followed was suffocating. Aang sat trembling, his chains heavy upon him. He thought of Katara's touch, of Toph's laughter, of Zuko's fire. He thought of the world he had left behind, a world scarred, but one where mercy still had meaning. And he thought of this world, where mercy was a word without weight, drowned beneath war eternal. The Inquisitor approached, his face unreadable. He crouched beside Aang, speaking in a low voice that carried only to him. You see now what the Imperium is. We do not live, we endure. We do not hope, we obey. To men like them you are a weapon or a curse, nothing more. Aang lifted his head, eyes wet with anger. I won't be either. I am the Avatar. I bring balance, even if it costs me everything. The Inquisitor's lips twitched in something that might have been amusement or pity. Then steel yourself, child. Because balance has no place in the Imperium, and the day is coming when you must choose, bend or break. Above, the cathedral's bells tolled once more, their sound hollow, echoing through the ruins like a dirge. And as the echoes faded, Aang knew with chilling certainty that the Inquisition's silence was more dangerous than their wrath. The Inquisitor's hold was strong, but not unbreakable. When night fell upon the ruined city, when the soldiers busied themselves hauling corpses to pyres and the priests muttered endless liturgies, Aang bent silence itself. A breath, a whisper of air, just enough to ease the lock on his chains, just enough to blur his footsteps as he moved through the shadows. He did not flee in rage, but in sorrow, slipping from captivity like mist into the streets. The city beyond the cathedral was worse than he imagined. Towers leaned broken, their windows gaping like empty eyes. Streets were choked with rubble, with smouldering husks of carts and the skeletal remains of once grand statues. The banners of the Imperium hung in tatters,
blackened by fire, their symbols of the double-headed eagle marred by blood, but it was the people who struck him hardest.
In alleys, gaunt children crouched beside corpses, eyes wide and hollow. Mothers whispered prayers as they clutched the hands of the dead, rocking back and forth in denial. Old men, their spines bent like reeds, dragged carts of ash toward mass graves. The air reeked of incense, burned not for reverence but to cover the stench of decay. Aang moved among them, cloaked in silence, his hood drawn. He healed where he could, drawing upon water to cleanse a wound, air to ease a fever, fire to warm the shivering. Yet each act drew whispers that spread like sparks. Miracle, heretic, saint, their voices blurred together until he could not tell blessing from curse. He pressed onward, deeper into the ruins, following the flow of humanity. At last he came to the hive's heart, where a cavernous plaza stretched before a broken shrine. Thousands gathered here, kneeling upon stone blackened by fire. Priests bellowed sermons from fractured pulpits, their voices rising against despair. "Endure," one cried, his arms outstretched. "The Emperor watches, though he is silent. His gaze is upon us, and his wrath will fall upon the heretic." The crowd murmured back, half belief, half fear. Aang felt it in his bones. They prayed not from hope but from terror. Their God did not promise peace, only survival. He sank to his knees among them, pulling his hood low. He listened as they prayed, watched as the broken lifted their eyes not to one another but to the sky, begging a God who never answered. His heart ached. This was not life, it was despair stretched across centuries. Beside him, a girl no older than 12 clutched a wooden effigy of the Emperor, its face cracked, its gold paint flaking away. She noticed him staring, and whispered, "He'll save us, won't he? The Emperor, he has to." Aang's throat tightened. He wanted to speak truth, to tell her salvation could not come from thrones of bone or gods of silence, but from compassion, from balance. Yet he saw the desperation in her eyes, the fragile hope clinging like a thread. To shatter it would be to break her. He forced a smile. He isn't the only one who can help. She tilted her head, confused, but before she could ask, horns sounded in the distance. The crowd trembled. Soldiers marched into the plaza, their boots striking in rhythm, their rifles raised. At their head strode an ecclesiarch, his robes embroidered with flame, his crozier burning with incense. His voice thundered across the square, "There are heretics among you, witches who bend the warp outside His grace. The Emperor demands purity. Step forth or all will suffer." The crowd whimpered, shrinking into itself. Aang's blood ran cold. He knew what was coming. The ecclesiarch raised his hand, and torches flared. Guards dragged forth 3 men, bound and beaten, their faces bruised. They were accused without proof, offered no defense. Their crime was suspicion alone. "Cleanse them," the priest roared. The men screamed as fire consumed them, their cries echoing across the plaza. Some in the crowd prayed louder, covering their ears with their own voices. Others wept, clutching children close. Aang's hands trembled. His every instinct screamed to act, to quench the fire, to end the horror. But he knew if he revealed himself now, the Inquisition would descend, and the crowd might turn upon him as swiftly as they prayed. The girl beside him clutched his arm, whispering through tears, "Why doesn't he stop this? Why doesn't he save them?" Aang had no answer, only silence. When the executions ended, the crowd dispersed in hollow silence. The ashes of the dead were scattered into the air, mingling with incense smoke. Aang rose, his spirit heavy as stone. He wandered through the hive's ruins for hours, seeing the truth written in every shadow, a people who endured but did not live, who obeyed but did not dream. At last he came to the hive's outer rim, where fields of ash stretched toward the horizon. Here the bodies of the nameless were dumped into pits without ceremony, smoke rising from pyres that never ceased to burn. He fell to his knees. For the first time since arriving, his strength broke. Tears streamed down his face, hissing against the ashes. "This galaxy," he whispered, "it's dying." The wind carried his words, scattering them into the smoke. Above, the stars burned cold, indifferent, and in the silence that followed, the whispers of the Chaos Gods stirred faintly at the edges of his mind, soft as breath. "You cannot save them, not like this." He pressed his hands to his ears, shaking his head, forcing the voices back, but their truth gnawed at him. He could not save them, not all, not like this. Balance had no meaning in a place where the scale was drowned in blood, and as the fires burned through the night, He asked himself the question that haunted every breath. If balance was powerless here, what must he become? The catacombs beneath the hive were endless. And Aang had wandered far from the cathedral, following whispers carried on the stale breath of the tunnels. The air was damp, heavy with the stink of mold and blood. Bones jutted from the walls where graves had collapsed. Skulls stared blindly from alcoves like silent witnesses. Torches burned low, their flames hissing with each draught of fetid wind. He moved with caution, the chains still dragging from his wrists. He had escaped the Inquisition's gaze for now, but the voices of the warp tugged at him, luring him downward, and then he heard it, a chant, low and guttural, echoing through the stone, 1,000 voices murmuring in unison, praising names that should never be spoken. The words twisted the air, filling it with dread. He followed them deeper, his feet splashing through stagnant pools, until the passage opened into a vast chamber. There, beneath a vault of cracked stone, the cult gathered. Dozens knelt before a circle of blood, their bodies painted with runes, their hands raised toward a figure at the center, the champion. He stood taller than any man, armored in plates of rust and bone, his body fused with the metal as if grown from it, horns curled from his helm, and his eyes burned with warp light. In his hands he bore a sword that writhed like a living thing, its edge dripping with fire that whispered. When he spoke, the chamber quaked. Brothers and sisters, the veil grows thin, the Avatar comes, and with him the gods demand trial. The cult turned as one, their eyes glowing with madness. Aang stepped forward, his heart steady despite the pounding in his chest. This ends tonight. No more blood, no more lies. The champion's laughter echoed like steel striking stone. You deny the gods, yet they whisper your name. They hunger for you, Avatar, and I will be the vessel through which they claim you. He raised his blade, and the cult roared, pounding fists against the stone. Aang drew a breath. The air shivered, the torches flared. Fire curled around his hands, water surged from the pools, earth rose beneath his feet. The chamber became a storm. The champion charged, his blade cleaving the air. Aang met him with a wall of stone, sparks screaming as metal bit rock. He spun, air carrying him upward, fire bursting from his palms. The champion's armor blackened, but he did not falter. With a roar, he swung again, the daemon blade shrieking as it struck. Aang barely deflected it with a surge of water hardened to ice. The force sent him tumbling, his body striking the ground. The cult roared in triumph. He staggered up, his breath ragged. The champion advanced, every step echoing like a drumbeat. You are mercy made flesh, weakness. Let me show you the truth of strength. Aang's eyes narrowed. Strength without compassion is nothing. The Avatar state surged. His tattoos flared, his eyes ignited, and the storm became fury incarnate. Air howled through the chamber, scattering cultists like leaves. Fire blazed white, water struck like blades, earth rose in jagged spears. The champion met him head-on. Their clash shook the catacombs. Blade against storm, daemon against Avatar. Sparks lit the dark as their powers collided, each strike threatening to shatter the world beneath them. Aang pressed forward, unleashing everything, the weight of the four elements, the legacy of 1,000 avatars. His fury hammered the champion back, each blow cracking armor, each surge forcing him down. Yet mercy held him back. He bound the champion in chains of earth, seared his armor with fire, hurled him with wind, but always stopped short of killing, and the champion saw it. He laughed, blood bubbling from his lips. You cannot finish it. You are too weak to kill. That is why you will lose. With a roar, he shattered the earth's chains, driving his blade through the storm. It cut across Aang's shoulder, fire and corruption burning into his flesh. Pain seared through him, his voice breaking in a cry. The Avatar state faltered, the storm wavered, the champion loomed above him, blade raised high. The gods claim you now. Aang's heart pounded. He saw the faces of the faithful, the girl with her effigy, the soldiers who fought, the children starving in the ruins. He saw their despair, their suffering, their endless death, and in that moment, the truth broke him. Mercy had not saved them. Mercy had cost lives. If he did not act now, more would fall. The galaxy would drown in blood, and he would be powerless to stop it. Tears burned his cheeks. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. He rose with fury, the Avatar state blazing brighter than ever. Fire erupted from his hands, searing the champion's flesh. Earth split, hurling him upward. Wind howled, breaking his body against the stone. Water struck last, freezing across his limbs, locking him in place, and Aang struck. A single blow of fire and earth, a storm's weight behind it, crushed the champion. His scream echoed through the chamber, cut short as his body shattered, his daemon blade dissolving into ash. The cult fell silent, their eyes wide, their voices broken. Then, one by one, they fled into the dark, their faith undone by the death of their champion.
Aang stood trembling, the glow of the avatar state fading, his breath ragged. He looked down at what he had done. A man lay dead at his hands, for the first time truly dead. His life had ended not by mercy, but by Aang's choice. He fell to his knees, his hands shaking, his tears falling onto the broken stone. I killed him. The catacombs were silent, but for the drip of water and the fading echoes of battle. No voices comforted him, no spirits came, only the weight of what he had done. The catacombs still reeked of blood and ash. Aang knelt where the Chaos Champion had fallen, his palms pressed into the cold stone, his body trembling as though the weight of the galaxy had collapsed upon him. His eyes stung with tears, but he could not look away from the blackened mark where the man's body had been obliterated. He had killed. The word echoed in his chest like a drumbeat. He had taken a life, not by accident, not by necessity, but by choice. The Avatar was meant to preserve balance, to be a bridge between worlds, to protect, to heal. Yet in that moment, with the world breaking around him, he had unleashed fire and earth with the intent to end. And end it had. He lifted trembling hands, still smeared with soot and blood. I broke my vow, he whispered. But another voice stirred within him, colder, harsher. You saved them. If you hadn't struck, you would be dead, and with you countless others. He shook his head violently. No, there had to be another way. There always is. The catacombs gave no answer, only silence, thick and suffocating. He staggered to his feet, his legs weak. Around him, the remnants of the cult's altar smoldered, their blood runes cracked and fading. The torches guttered in the damp air, their flames dim. The chamber felt hollow, as though some vast presence had retreated, leaving only absence behind. And yet, he felt no triumph, only emptiness. A monk moved slowly through the tunnels, each step heavier than the last. He remembered the faces of the cultists, twisted by madness, yet still human. How many of them had once been farmers, workers, children? How many had once prayed for protection, only to be claimed by chaos? His mercy had always been his strength, now it felt like a lie. At last he reached the surface. The hive streets lay in ruin, smoke rising in great columns that blackened the stars. Corpses lined the avenues, the pyres burning still. The faithful prayed among the dead, whispering to the Emperor for salvation that never came. When they saw him, whispers rippled through the crowd. The Avatar, the Fire Saint, the heretic, their voices tangled like chains around his neck. He pulled his hood low and pressed forward, but eyes followed him everywhere, eyes of hope, eyes of fear, eyes of suspicion. He passed a group of guardsmen who stood beside a burned-out hab-block, their armor scorched, their weapons cracked. One of them spat as he saw Aang. "Witch, we wouldn't need your tricks if the Emperor still cared for us." Another, younger, stepped forward, his gaze filled with awe. "He saved us. I saw it. He fought like a god." The older soldier snarled, shoving him back. "And gods damn us as often as they save us. Mark my words, when the Inquisition decides, this one will burn." Aang moved on without reply. Their words cut deep, sharper than the champion's blade. No matter what he did, he was divided between miracle and heresy, savior and curse. As night fell, he found himself at the edge of the city, where the ruins gave way to ash plains. He sat beside a smoldering pyre, staring into the flames. They licked upward in tongues of orange and red, their heat washing against his skin. The fire whispered. It reminded him of Ozai, of the Fire Nation, of the day he had stripped a tyrant's bending rather than kill. That day, he had believed balance could be preserved without blood. That day, he had proven to himself that killing was never the answer. But this galaxy was not his world. Here mercy had no place. Here peace was weakness. Here the fire demanded more.
He lifted his hand, letting a flame dance across his palm. It shimmered in the dark, small yet alive. He stared into it, his heart torn. "Is this what I must become?" he whispered. "A killer, a weapon, is there no other path?" The wind answered with silence. His tears hissed against the flame as they fell. He clenched his fist, extinguishing it, but the question lingered, gnawing at him. Behind him, footsteps approached. He turned to see the Inquisitor, cloaked in shadow, his eyes glinting in the firelight. "You killed," the man said simply. Undag bowed his head. "I had no choice." "There is always choice," the Inquisitor replied, "and you chose survival. Do not weep for it. In the Imperium, that is strength." Undag's voice cracked. "Strength that costs a soul, is it strength at all?" The Inquisitor crouched, his gaze sharp. "The Emperor demands sacrifice. Mercy damns more than cruelty. You begin to understand." Undag shook his head, fury burning in his chest. "If understanding means becoming like you, I want no part of it." The Inquisitor smiled faintly, a joyless thing. "It is not about what you want, Avatar. It is about what the galaxy demands. You can fight it, but sooner or later you will see. To preserve life you must take it." That is the only balance left in this age. He rose and turned away, his cloak trailing like a shadow. Pray the choice does not break you before the end. Undag stared after him, his hands trembling. The flames crackled beside him, their light reflected in his eyes. For the first time in his life, he felt the path before him split not between peace and war, but between survival and annihilation. And as the pyres burned through the night, he whispered to the fire, his voice breaking, "If the cost of saving them is to kill, then what kind of savior am I?" The flames gave no answer, only the silence of the dead. The warp bled into his dreams again. Undag floated in a void of shifting color, a storm of fire and shadow, rivers of blood that flowed upward into skies, split by screaming light. The voices came not as whispers this time, but as a chorus that shattered silence, each word like a hammer upon his soul. Avatar, balance bringer, soul of fire and storm, you are ours. Khorne's laughter boomed first, thunder shaking the void. His armored form loomed, drenched in blood, his blade dripping eternity. Now you have killed. Taste it. Strength flows through you. Every life you take, every enemy you strike down, brings you closer to glory. Why deny it? You are mine. The air shimmered, and Saunt unfolded from the storm in a cascade of feathers and shifting masks. His voice layered, smooth and endless. But killing is not the end. It is the means. Destiny is yours to weave. Serve me, and I will show you how to bend galaxies, to reshape the Imperium, to end the war forever. Think, Avatar, peace crafted by your hand, not left to chance. Slaanesh emerged next, their beauty radiant, unbearable to behold. Every word dripped sweetness, every movement promised ecstasy. Why fight? You deserve freedom, love, joy. Cast aside burden and pain. No more vows, no more chains. Give yourself to me, and every breath will be bliss. And then came the weight of rot, warm and suffocating. Nurgle smiled from a bloated face, his arms spread wide. Poor child, you suffer so needlessly. Let me cradle you in my garden. No fear, no failure, no endless war. Only peace, eternal and gentle. Stop fighting, little one. Rest. Their voices thundered together, drowning his thoughts. Rage, fate, pleasure, peace. They wrapped around him like chains, pulling from every side. His chest heaved, his will shook. He wanted to scream. And then, another voice, faint, weak, yet unyielding. Anger. It was not the Chaos Gods, it was something else, something distant and broken but vast. Light pierced the storm, thin as a candle flame but steady, unwavering. He saw, for an instant, a throne of golden bone, a figure slumped upon it, his flesh rotting but his presence vast as the stars. The Emperor. He did not speak in words, but in silence, heavy with will. His presence pressed into Aang's spirit, not with promises but with weight, the burden of 1,000,000,000 souls crying out at once, their faith, their desperation, their prayers. Aang trembled. He stood between gods eternal, their voices clawing at his soul, and a throne of silence that demanded nothing but endurance. He cried out, his voice breaking, "Why me? I didn't ask for this. I wanted peace. I wanted balance. Why drag me here, into your endless war?" The Chaos Gods roared with laughter. "Because you are weak," Khorne bellowed. "Because you dream," Tuan whispered. "Because you desire," Slaanesh cooed. "Because you fear," Nurgle sighed. The Emperor's silence pressed harder, and Aang fell to his knees, torn between voices that offered everything, and a throne that offered nothing. Tears burned his face. "I don't want to kill. I don't want to surrender. I just want to do what's right." The storm writhed. The Chaos Gods pressed closer, their shadows towering over him, their hands reaching. The Emperor's light flickered, guttering like a candle in the gale. Aang screamed. The Avatar state erupted. His tattoos burned white, his eyes blazed, and the four elements spiraled around him in a storm of defiance. Fire roared against Khorne's rage, water flowed against Nurgle's rot, air shattered Slaanesh's whispers, earth stood unyielding against Tuan's sighs. "I will not serve you," he cried. "Not you, not them, not anyone. I am the Avatar. I bring balance." The storm convulsed, the gods howling in fury. Their voices shook the void, promising torment, cursing his name. Yet for the first time, they retreated, shadows torn back by the blaze of the Avatar state. The Emperor's light flared faintly brighter, not triumph but acknowledgement, a spark of will in the dark. Aang felt it, not mercy, not compassion, but endurance. A reminder that survival itself was sometimes all that could be won. The vision shattered. He awoke upon the ash plains outside the hive, his body trembling, sweat drenching his skin. The pyres burned still, their smoke rising into a starless sky.
The whispers of the Chaos Gods lingered in his skull, faint and venomous. The Emperor's silence pressed still, heavy and unrelenting. Aang rose slowly, his breath ragged. He looked to the fires, to the ruins of the city, to the endless night. His heart ached, torn between despair and defiance. He whispered to the flames, "If this galaxy has no balance, then I will make it." The wind carried his words, scattering them into smoke. The stars above gave no answer, and in the silence he knew the war for his soul was far from over. The ash plains stretched to the horizon, black and endless beneath a sky torn with scars of warp lightning. The hive city lay broken behind Aang, its towers shattered, its streets running with smoke and blood. The pyres still burned, their flames flickering like the last prayers of a dying people, and in the heavens the veil split open. The rift widened above, a wound of seething light that bled voices and shapes into the world. The Chaos Gods pressed close, their laughter echoing across the plains, shaking stone, rattling bone. Daemons poured from the wound in torrents, their bodies shifting, clawed and screaming. The earth split where they landed, their shadows spilling like poison across the land. The Imperium soldiers formed their lines at the city's edge, las guns raised, bolters thundering, banners torn but still raised high. Priests bellowed hymns into the storm, their voices hoarse, their eyes wild. The Inquisitor stood among them, his blade lifted, his gaze locked on the sky. And Aang stood alone upon the plain. The wind whipped his robes, the ash burned beneath his feet. His heart pounded, his spirit a storm of doubt and fury. He had fought, he had killed, he had resisted, but now the scale was too vast. No bending, no storm, no avatar state could banish God's eternal. The voices pressed into him, clawing at his soul. Khorne thundered, "Strike, Avatar. Kill without mercy. Become strength incarnate." Tsinch whispered, "Shape the future, Avatar. Rewrite destiny. Craft the end of war itself." Slaanesh cooed, "Shed the burden. Embrace joy. You need not suffer for them any longer." Nurgle sighed, "Stop fighting, little one. Lay down your grief. Rest in the garden." Their promises coiled tighter, louder, each word a chain. Aang staggered, his breath ragged, his eyes burned with tears.
He looked back at the city, at the soldiers who fought though they feared, at the faithful who prayed though they despaired, at the children who clutched broken effigies of a silent God. They did not need a God. They needed hope, and hope demanded sacrifice. Aang closed his eyes, he drew in breath, and for the last time the Avatar state erupted. His tattoos blazed, his eyes burned white, and the elements roared in unity. Fire crowned him, earth steadied him, air lifted him, water flowed through him. He rose into the air above the plain, his body a blazing storm of balance, his spirit burning against eternity. The daemons shrieked, their forms unraveling beneath his light. The rift trembled, its edges recoiling as if in pain. The Chaos Gods roared in fury, their voices deafening, their wrath shaking the stars. But Aang did not fight them with blade or flame. He turned inward, to the cycle of the Avatar, to the balance that had defined his every breath. He reached deep into his soul, deeper than he had ever dared. He found the spark that tethered him to life, the thread that bound him to the world, and he tore it open. Light burst from him, not fire, not air, not earth or water, but all and none. A rift formed within his spirit, a mirror to the one above. His voice thundered across the plain, carried on wind and flame, echoing into the warp itself. "You will not have me, you will not have them. I am the Avatar, and I give myself for balance." The storm of his spirit collided with the rift. For a heartbeat, all creation seemed to pause. Then came the shattering. The rift screamed, its edges tearing apart, its light collapsing inward. Daemons were dragged back, clawing and shrieking as they were consumed. The voices of the Chaos Gods bellowed in rage, their promises turning to curses, their chains snapping as the wound closed. The Emperor's light flared faintly, as if acknowledging the act, a spark among the stars, and then all was silence. The rift was gone, the daemons with it. Only ash and smoke remained. Aang's body fell gently to the ground, the glow fading from his eyes, his tattoos dimming. He lay still upon the plain, his breath gone, his spirit poured out into the void. The soldiers lowered their weapons. The faithful fell to their knees, torn between worship and grief. The Inquisitor stood silent, his gaze fixed upon the boy who had defied gods. His lips tightened, but no words came. The child Aang had healed in the cathedral ran forward, clutching the wooden effigy of the Emperor. She knelt beside him, tears streaking her face. "He saved us," she whispered, "not the Emperor. Him." Her words spread like fire through the crowd, whispered, then shouted, The Avatar, but the Imperium would not remember. The Inquisition's records would bury his name. The Ecclesiarchy would forbid his story. Officially, no such boy had walked their worlds. The Emperor alone was praised for the salvation of the Hive. And yet, in alleys and ruins, in whispers among the forgotten, a tale lingered of a boy who came from nowhere, who defied the gods of chaos and the silence of the Imperium, who gave his soul for balance in a galaxy that knew none. The tale spread in secret, never written, never sanctioned, but never silenced. And so it was said, for one fleeting moment, even in the 41st millennium, balance touched eternity.